Hello, guys! Hello, everyone! Good afternoon, and welcome to one more class at SEDA College Online. I'm teacher Camila, and this is the review session. So, thank you guys for coming and participating in one more class. So, did you watch yesterday's class? So yesterday we did a little bit of vocabulary, some useful phrases that we can use in a conversation when you want to be polite and maybe you need to interrupt someone or maybe you need to disagree to someone. So things that can be a little bit tricky and maybe you don't know how to do it because you think you can be rude, but there are ways to do it in a polite way. So and today we're gonna have a grammar topic. So yesterday we did some vocab and today we're gonna do a little bit of grammar. Today we're gonna talk about the difference between gerund and infinitive. So when to use gerund, when to use infinitive, because it can be a little bit confusing because there are some exceptions and sometimes both of them work, sometimes just one, sometimes they have different meanings. So we're gonna have a general overview of gerunds and infinitives today, okay? So as I always say, get ready. You guys know by now. As I say, this is a normal class. You need to take notes. We have exercises. So it's very important for your learning process that you take notes, that you do the activities, correct the exercises is the best way to learn and memorize the topic we're talking about. Okay? So let's see. Gerund versus infinitive. So what do we know about them? The first thing we know is that gerunds and infinitives are verb forms. They are not tenses, okay? It's not a verb tense, it's a verb form. They are not used as the main verb in sentences. Did you know that? So when we use the infinitive or the gerund, they are not the main verb. So the gerund is formed by ing, so adding ing to the base form of a verb, like running, talking, doing, etc. And infinitives consist of two parts. So we need the infinitive marker to, and then the base form of the verb. So to run, to talk, to do, to speak, and etc. Okay? So these are the two verb forms that we're going to talk about today. Gerunds and infinitive. So let's start talking about main verbs. So gerunds and infinitives, they can follow main verbs. And how so? Example, she enjoys playing the guitar. So in this case, the main verb is enjoy and the gerund is following the main verb. Another one. He promised to sing for us. So again, promise is the main verb here, and to sing is following the verb promised. Okay? I like reading mysteries, and I like to read mysteries. So what happens is that sometimes we can use both the ing form or the infinitive form, and they have exactly the same meaning. And sometimes they have different, sometimes some verbs, like enjoy, can only be followed by ing. Some verbs, like promised, can only be followed by infinitive. And some other verbs, like can be followed by both gerund and infinitive. I know, it's confusing. So the only way to do it is by memorizing. So which verbs go with which verb, which verb form, okay? So let's try and understand it a little bit more. Let's start talking about gerunds. So gerunds take usually four forms. So the simple form, so present simple, perfect, passive, and passive perfect. Examples. She avoids driving during rush hour. So avoids is present simple followed by ing. Perfect. He admits having taken the documents. So admit is followed by ing and then the perfect form of taken, of take. Passive. They dislike being put in the last row. So dislike is being followed by the ing form and then put, which is the passive form. And then the passive perfect. I appreciate having been given this opportunity. So appreciate is followed by ing and then the verb to be and past participle. Okay, so these are the 4 forms that we usually see the gerund. Verbs that can be followed by gerund but can't be followed by infinitive. Guys, this is the moment to use your memories, okay? The only way to do it is by memorizing the verbs. So try and make sentences. I put here the list for you. After the class, you can download these slides and try to make up sentences using these verbs. It's the best way to practice. And then you know that if you're making a sentence with this verb as a main verb and you need a second verb, this second verb has to be a gerund. It cannot be infinitive, okay? So this is the list of verbs followed by gerund only. They cannot be followed by infinitive form. So the verbs are admit, delay, finish, quit, appreciate, deny, keep, risk, avoid, dislike, mind, suggest, consider, enjoy, miss, and recommend. So every time you use one of these verbs and you need a second verb in the sentence right after the main verb, it has to be in a gerund form. An example here. I miss having lunch with my family every Sunday. Okay, so the verb miss is followed by another verb in ing form. I can't say I miss to have lunch with my family every Sunday. Why, teacher? Because it can't be followed by infinitive, only by gerund. Okay, so my suggestion here is take these verbs after the class and try to make up some sentences using them, using a second verb, and remember to practice that they are always followed by gerund, always. Okay, good. Next, let's talk about infinitives. So infinitives have a number of forms, okay? They have more than 4, more than 5. But these are the most common forms that we see usually. So the simple form, like Eva wants to become a lawyer. So here we have the verb want, and after that, to become. Progressive, they seem to be telling the truth. So seem to be telling the truth. Perfect, he hopes to have finished his work by Friday. So the verb hope is followed by to have and then the past participle of finish. He hopes to have finished his work by Friday. Passive, Anna deserves to be promoted. So Anna is not doing the action, she's receiving the action. It's the passive. And passive perfect, we pretended to have been surprised. So again, we have the infinitive to here. Okay? So this is the list of verbs that can be followed by infinitive but can't be followed by gerund. So again, we need to memorize them, okay? So the verbs are agree, expect, manage, pretend, choose, fail, need, promise, decide, hope, offer, seem, deserve, intend, plan, and want. So every time you use one of these verbs, the second verb has to be infinitive form. It cannot be a gerund form after these verbs, okay? So again, my suggestion, the same we did with the gerund. So write down some sentences with the gerund and then take this list and make up some sentences using the main verb followed by an infinitive verb. Okay, let's take a look at an example. He offered to pick me up at the airport. We can't say he offered picking me up at the airport. It's incorrect. Okay, so this is the second list. This is the list of infinitive. Guys, I'm really sorry. I wish there was a easier way to do it, but there isn't. The best way to do is to memorize all of them, and the only way to memorize is by practicing. Okay, but there are some categories that help us a little bit between gerund and infinitive. Besides this list, because we have many other verbs in English language, so we're going to talk about some other categories as well. So, gerund or infinitive. Some verbs can be followed by either gerund or infinitive. So we talked about a list of only followed by gerund, one list of only followed by infinitive, and now we're going to talk about some verbs that can be followed by both of them, okay? Sometimes there is no significant difference in meaning between a sentence with a gerund and a sentence with infinitive. Sometimes they mean the same thing. Example, he began humming, or he began to hum. So these two sentences, although they are gerund and infinitive, they mean exactly the same thing, okay? So the most common verbs in this category are the following verbs dealing with time. So the verbs dealing with time are begin, continue, and start. So after these three verbs, most of the times you can use infinitive or gerund, and they have the same meaning. All right? Example there. He started studying English when he was 10. Or he started to study English when he was 10 is exactly the same thing. Okay? So after begin, continue, and start, you can use ing or infinitive too. Okay? But we're talking about verbs that talk about time, begin, continue, and start. And stop is also a verb that talks about time in a way, yeah? But the verb stops has something different a little. The verb stop is used to express two different meanings. So attention here. The first example, we stopped singing. We stopped singing. So it means that the singing has ended. You finished the action, yeah? When we use stop plus gerund, it means to leave a habit. So something that you used to do and you stopped doing it completely. Okay, so it's to quit, to finish a habit. All right? The second example, we stopped to sing. So the singing has not started yet. It means that when we use stop plus infinitive, it means that an action was interrupted for doing something else. So we stopped, let's say we were driving and we stopped to sing. So it means I finished one action to start another one. Yeah? Can you see the difference? So when I use the verb stop with the gerund, means something I used to do, a habit that I had that I stopped doing completely. When I use stop plus infinitive, means I was doing an action, I stopped that action to start something else. Okay? This is very important because stop is a verb that talk about time. So sometimes people think that is the same as begin, continue, and start, and you can use both of the verb forms in the same way, but no, they do have different meanings when we're talking about stop. All right? Now, after verbs dealing with emotion, so let's talk about this category. So verbs dealing with emotion, they can take the gerund form, and they can take the infinitive form after them, but they have different meanings too. So when I use the gerund after a verb of emotion, so for example, love, I'm talking about vividness of an action, event, or state, So what is vividness? So something that you remember very well, some memory that's very strong to you. And it indicates actual occurrence. When we use the infinitive after an emotion verb like love, it indicates future, potential, or hypothetical action, event, or state. So let's see. When I talk about gerund, it means I have a vividness memory of what happened. It actually occurred. Yes? And the infinitive form is talking mostly about the future, about possibility. So let's see an example. I usually prefer cooking my own food. So when I'm using the ing, I'm talking about something that actually occurred. I usually cook my own food. This is a real situation that happened. But tonight, I would prefer to go out. So here we're using would. And when I use would, I'm talking about possibility. Yeah? So I usually prefer cooking my own food, actual occurrence. But tonight I would prefer to go out, indication of future action or possibility. Okay? Now, verbs in this category are hate, like, love, and prefer. These are verbs that express opinion and emotion. So after these verbs, we can follow these two rules. Gerund, something happened and I remember it very well, vividness. Infinitive, indication of future potential or hypothetical action or event. Okay. Good, let's go to the next one. So we talked about verbs dealing with emotion. Now we're going to talk about verbs dealing with memory. So when I use gerund, this is very important, guys, because maybe if you're not a native speaker, they can sound very similar. You say, teacher, it's exactly the same thing. But if you're speaking to a native speaker, it is completely different to them. So we need to be able to understand the difference so we can communicate well what we want to say. Okay? So although it sounds very similar, they do have different meanings. So let's see. The gerund. I remember locking the door. I remember locking the door. So the door was locked and then the action of locking was remember. So I did lock the door and after that I remember that I did it. Okay? So locking comes first and the memory of doing it comes after. Now let's see the infinitive. I remembered to lock the door. I remembered to lock the door. So the remember of a responsibility took place before the action of locking was performed. So it means I had to lock. So I remember first and then I did the action. Can you see the difference? So on the first one, I did the action first and then I remember. And on the second one, I first remembered and then I did the action. Yeah? So verbs in this category are remember, forget, and regret. So when using these three verbs, you need to remember this rule. When I use remember, forget, and regret with gerund means action first, and then the action of forgetting, regretting, or remembering. Infinitive first, you forget, first you regret, and then the action. Yeah? Okay? Good. Let's practice now, shall we? So choose a verb from the box and complete the sentences with gerund or infinitive form. So here we have 10 sentences and we have 10 verbs. I want you to look at the box, choose the best verb to complete the sentence, and then put it in the correct form. So you need to use it either in the ing form or in the infinitive to form. Okay? I'm going to give you 2 to 3 minutes. Write down your answers, and on the next slide, we're going to check your answers. Okay, a few more seconds before we check. So pay attention to the first verb, to the main verb, to see what form should follow it. All right. Shall we start the correction? Let's do it. So the first one. My brother and his wife delayed. Delayed what? When we talk about children, the verb is have. But after delayed, do we use infinitive or gerund? Ta-da! Having children. So after the verb delayed in our list, after the verb delay, we use gerund form. Number 2. I keep his number, but he doesn't answer. So after keep, we use gerund form as well. I keep trying his number, but he doesn't answer. 3. I plan full-time next year. So what do we do full-time? Work. After the verb plan, we use infinitive to. I plan to work full-time next year. 4. My parents decided an extra week. So after the verb decide, we use infinitive form. My parents decided to stay an extra week. She quit the piano a year ago. Let me just fix this guy, sorry. Go. So she quit the piano. So what action do we do with the piano? We play. So after quit, we use ing. She quit playing the piano a year ago. 6. Patrick deserves for the new position. So after the verb deserves, we use infinitive form. But here is a passive form, yes? Because we don't do, when we are hired, we can't do the action of hiring. We receive the action. So it's a passive form. Patrick deserves to be hired for the new position. 7. What do you dislike on the weekend? So dislike is a verb that shows an emotion. Yeah? So dislike is followed by ing. What do you dislike doing on the weekend? 8. We enjoyed to your family. So again, a passive form. Being introduced. So enjoy is followed by gerund form, but in this case we again need a passive form. So we enjoyed being introduced to your family. 9. Where do you plan next summer? So the verb plan is followed by infinitive. So where do you plan to go next summer? And the last one, I promise you here at 5 o'clock. So after the verb promise, we use infinitive form. I promise to meet you here at 5 o'clock. All right. Any questions? Any doubts? So if you have any questions, anything you want to ask me, just leave a comment here. This is it for today. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you can understand a little bit better how to use gerund and infinitive form. And if you want to study further, do the exercises I suggested. So download these slides and use the list that I left here for gerund and infinitive, and try to practice writing down some sentences with them. Is the best way to memorize, in my opinion. Okay, so thank you guys. I hope to see you guys here tomorrow, and have a lovely evening. See you. Bye.